I'm speaking with Father Harry Bourne in Sliema. Today is the 13th of May, 1985. May I begin by asking for some background about yourself, where you were born and when you were born, if I may ask?
Well, I was born 75 years ago on the 23rd of this month, 23rd May. I was born at Kalkara, and I was educated first at the government school of Kalkara, the elementary school. Then I went to the Lyceum, and from there I joined the Dominican order in 1926. I studied at Rabat, Malta, and I was ordained on the 15th August 1933. After that, I was sent to Italy, where I spent 2 years, Bologna, Bolzano, but mainly at Venice. Then I came back here, and my first work was when somebody asked me to start writing a novel because there was a competition on. First I wouldn't do it. Then I just decided, and I wrote my first novel. That was in 1935 when I got back here.
What was the novel called?
It was called The Silver Cross, Salit al-Fidda. Of course I wrote other novels then, but that started my literary career in prose and poetry, because I wrote poetry too. But after that, I started broadcasting as a part-timer at the local rediffusion. Then came the war, and I was a military chaplain with one of the Maltese, they call the RMA regiment. This was the 2nd Regiment, anti-aircraft regiment. And although by the end of the war I was demobilized, yet I soldiered on as an officiating chaplain till 1961. But as I was not a regular soldier, so I could do other jobs. And I started working here at Nazareno. I should say that I started in this church in 1939, and ever since I've not changed the place. I've always been here up to this very day. And so I do a lot of church work and preaching and also teaching. In 1948 we opened a college in Valletta, and I was its first secretary, and I used to teach the upper classes Latin and English. And in 1953 I was regularly employed with the rediffusion company, radio work. And I started as literary editor, but eventually I became program manager, that means of all the programs. And after that, program consultant for the 2 companies, when there were 2 companies, that means the rediffusion for sound and the MTV, Malta Television, for television. I became consultant for both companies. And I retired at the age of 65 in 1975. But apart from that, I kept doing other interesting work, at least for me, which I considered very interesting, and that was writing for the stage and eventually building a theatre, which still exists, at Boris Hall. But it houses about 600-700 people.
Where is that?
It's quite close. I hope you'll be able to see it when we're going by very soon. And I've written many, many, many stage plays, comedies and dramas. And for radio, I've also written about 8 serials in all, if you count the episodes, half-hour episodes, over 2,000 half-hour episodes, you know, like those soap box opera. They carry on and on and on endlessly. But they all came to a conclusion, mine did. And now, I'm still in charge of my theatre, we call it the Boris Hall. I still do a lot of writing. I've got, at the moment I'm finishing a novel in English, which I hope to have published. I've written another book in English called Emphasis on Humour, which is philosophical study on humour. I hope I'll be able to publish it at any time. I've not been lucky so far. I haven't found a publisher. And I do a good deal of preaching because preaching is very close to my heart. That's one of my principal jobs. I belong to an order of preachers, but I like preaching all the time. I go all about around the island, especially during Lent. And I think although I'm 75, yet I still carry on working just as I did when I was 30 years. I see no difference when there's some ailments coming here and there. Now and again, you can't do without those. And you, especially, as a matter of fact, you've got to expect them. But I still carry on, and that's my life story.
I noticed when we went up the steps to see the bells, you seemed very agile. I think I was more nervous than you. So, regarding the photos that you kindly showed me and allowed me to make some copies, could you tell me the background to those photos?
Yes. Well, those photographs go to a time when I was 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, so I was not the one who took them. But I have very vivid memories of Anzacs in those days. See, many of them were at Kalkara Hospital, which that would not be more than half a mile away from where I was born and from where I lived with my family. And these Anzacs quite often used to come down for walks to Kalkara. That's where I lived. And I've got a very clear memory of 2 of them who made friends with my grandfather. My grandfather on my mother's side, the Maltese grandfather. Ashkembri, his name was. And I even remember the name of those 2 Anzacs. One was his name was Coleman, and the other was Ratcliffe and Coleman. Now, this grandfather of mine, he used to be what we used to call a ship chandler. He used to provide ships, cater for ships when they came in. And during the war, as he had catered many German ships, he lost many of his ships, and many of it practically lost his job out here. And he was the son of a Gotterton, like you, on my mother's side, so I can go into although my mother was Maltese, we come from a Gotterton line on her side. And they used to come to grandfather's house, and in summer in Malta, people sit outside their doors for the cool air, and they used to come there and drink a bottle of beer with my grandfather outside on the doorstep. And sometimes my father used to take us up to the hospital where they lived for a walk, and we used to meet them. Then I have other memories of the Anzacs. I remember them coming down in batches, sometimes 10, sometimes 20 of them, all together. singing happily, and at certain times reveling in bars, singing and drinking Australian songs. And they made close friendships with the Maltese. I remember there was a sense of camaraderie. I should say that many families had special friends. Now, I know that because I used to see these soldiers talking to them and sitting at their door or chatting. They were really, really great friends. I was not old enough to note many more things, but this still remains in my mind. And another memory I have is that when I was at Kalkara Hospital, where they were, there used to be a railing all round the hospital, and behind the railing many shrubs of geranium grew up, all colours, red and pink and white. And on one occasion I used to go on my toes to look at these flowers because it was too high for me to look into. And I remember once, well, I know because he had a hat on, the Australian hat on, one of these Anzacs, he picked a geranium, pink geranium, and handed over to me through the railings. I've still got that in mind. I still remember that. And I also remember concert parties which used to be given at this hospital. And as my uncle, Father Bourne, was chaplain in that hospital, quite often I was admitted there. I could go there. I had the privilege of going into the canteen. And the canteen was on the Zabar gate outside the hospital. And I remember not only Anzacs, but also soldiers, even prisoners of war, even a Turk, and English soldiers, but particularly Anzacs, buying me toffees in the canteen. So that is another memory which is still in my mind. And another one, you took a photograph of it. There was a concert of Mrs. Sweetman. Mrs. Sweetman was a great patriot. And she entertained the soldiers by organizing concert parties. And one of these parties was all the Allies taking part in the war. New Zealanders, Australians, Canadians, Irish, Scotch, Maltese, all over, and singing, everyone singing a song in his own costume. And I remember the Australian one. I don't remember all the words, but I can remember the Australian. There was a girl dressed in an Australian uniform with the Australian hat and singing, "By our side, Australia takes her place," and carried on. So that is another vivid memory of the Australians.
Sorry for interrupting,
no,
but
carry on, yes.
Upstairs before you remembered some additional lines.
Yes, and that was the end. I still remember the end. I remember the beginning and the end. And the end was something like this: wherever the British stand that way, Australia will be there.
Beautiful.
That was the close of the song. But I'm surprised myself how I can remember that, because this was ages ago. I was 5, 6 years old, not older than that. But I must have heard it only once, because there were no recordings then. I just heard it on the stage, and yet it's still in my mind. It's still there after all those years, which means that the presence of those people must have made a great impact on me.
Yes.
Otherwise, I would not have remembered them so vividly. I also remember that mostly there were a few short ones, small ones, but generally they were all tall people and very handsome people, young and full of viv and energy.
So, would I be right in thinking that they stood out apart from the other British troops?
Yes, of course. And then another memory that is a sadder one was, in those days, when I was, when they were here in Malta, before they came to Malta, they were at Gallipoli, everybody knows that. And in those days, we did not have many newspapers. a matter of fact, perhaps only one or two. But we used to get news of the war in what we used to call telegrams. A boy used to say telegram or telegram in the street, and this telegram consisted of a strip of paper, very much like the printer's proof. You know how they give you a strip of paper for the first proof to correct your... And it looked like that. Sometimes it contained a short message, sometimes it contained a very long message. And when on one occasion the tragedy of Gallipoli came over in that telegram, I remember people crying, people reading that news, my father for one, with tears in their eyes. But out here in Malta, we got to know the Anzacs while they were still fighting. Then we knew them better when they got here. And that explains why they were so well received and loved when they got here and made so many friends. So I can tell you that that was one of the main reasons. It all comes back to me through those telegrams.
And when they arrived, I suppose it would have been a great
event. A great event. They, a troop ship, a hospital ship, got into the harbour. I wasn't there, but I was told, I used to hear my grandfather say, that they marched triumphantly with people applauding and going, I don't know where they took them first, but then they were distributed to various parts of the island, in Taffa, Kalkara, and other places. Those who were strong enough, they were billeted somewhere else, but of course I wouldn't know that, I wouldn't remember that.
And I believe the Maltese people opened their houses to them.
They did.
Is that true?
They did. They made friends, and I have an idea of hearing my people say that some of them either got married or were going to get married, but that could have easily been taking place to locals.
And what I can see in Valletta, you know, with the ship coming into the harbour and so on, crowds would have gathered. What about somewhere like Sliema? Was there any particular role played by Sliema?
No, because Sliema was not what it is today. It was already, becoming a frequented town, but not much transport, although there was a ferry even then between Sliema and Valletta. And I'm not sure, but I think that's close to Sliema. There was a hospital called the Blue Sisters, but in those days it was Amit Clap Hospital, and I think there were wounded soldiers there, but I'm not certain whether there were any Australians with them. But there used to be the wounded roaming around Sliema. As a matter of fact, sometimes Sliema, the inhabitants of Sliema have their legs pulled with a song. It used to be sung during the football days, and it used to go, Mama Jibri Feru Tidar, Mummy, bring me a wounded soldier to my home.
Really?
Yes.
Marvellous, though, when you know the background to those.
Yes.
And when would that have been sung? Or when did it become popular?
Oh, in the 1920s. In the 1920s, when there was great rivalry between the Sliema and Floriana team, two great teams, both of them, and sort of the Floriana people used to sing this to tease the Sliema people, you know how it goes in the 1920s.
The first photograph that I've made a copy of, do you remember the one I mean? It was the first one you showed me of it was the British medical officer.
Yes.
Can you put on tape for me which hospital that was?
Well, that was Kalkara Hospital. And it definitely is a hospital because the Anzacs are standing around a British medical orderly, and otherwise they wouldn't be with him. And generally they were at Kalkara Hospital, the Anzacs, so that must have been Kalkara, definitely Kalkara Hospital. Very few were in other hospitals, but there, the bulk was there.
And leading from the fact that so many Australians were treated so well by the Maltese, I suppose in the years immediately after the war, there would have been considerable continuing interest by the Maltese in Australia, especially regarding emigration.
Yes. I can say that during the war, that war, 1914, 1918, my uncle went to Australia. It was during that war. My uncle found himself in Australia before 1918. I can't remember the date exactly. He's got his family still in Australia. His daughter, she sends me a Christmas card every Christmas, and she lives at 20 Castle Street, Adelaide. And he was there, and I know that he made well because he started...
I'll turn it on.
I was telling you about my uncle.
Yeah.
He made well because he started a lemonade factory, mineral water factory. And at least from what he used to write to my grandmother, that means his mother, he was very well off and well known and respected. And he had many Maltese working for him too, Maltese immigrants working for him. And luckily he had a son who was with one of these medical men, not a doctor, one of the first aid man. And there was a motorbike race, and he got run over and killed by a motorbike.
Now, is that Schembri?
Schembri, yes. Frank Schembri. And then I had another uncle who went later, but that was after the war, much before, long before this this last war, and he went to Sydney, Carmelo. You know his daughter Rose, who's my cousin.
And he was Schembri.
Schembri, Carmelo. He was Frank's brother.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, his brother.
He went before Frank.
No, Frank went during the war, during the 1914 war. But Carmelo, for Rose's father, went after the First World War. But long before World War II, long before.
I think I'm in correspondence with Frank Schembri's daughter, Josephine.
Josephine. Kauki,
sorry. Yes. Yeah, I've been corresponding with her for about a year now.
Yes, how's that?
Well, through my research. She's been telling me all about the Schembri soft drinks and all that.
There you are.
Yeah, gee, it's a small world, isn't
That's how it is. Well, that man was my mother's brother, my father, and she stood right to me. Well, that's why you remember 20 Castle Street, don't you?
20 Castle Street. Yeah, I thought it rang a bell. Yeah, she sent me some labels, some of the old labels of Schembri soft drinks with the Maltese cross on the design.
That's right. So you link up, isn't it? Would link up. And
sorry, I'll turn it on. May I ask now about your parents? You said your mother was Maltese.
Yes.
Can you tell me about your mother and your father?
My father was English. And they came from Devon. And in Malta, he did a lot of work for football. My father found at the St. George's, one of the very first teams in Malta. And quite by accident today, I have a big photograph of my father with his team, and this photograph was taken on the 13th May, like today, 1900, exactly 85 years ago, when the St. George's beat Floriana 3-1 and got a cup. And it's a large, full-size photograph, which I've got in my room here. Exactly 85 years ago, today.
And why was he in Malta?
He was born in Malta. He was born in Malta.
Is he from Kalkara?
No, he was born at Kazbika because his father was in the army, was in Malta in the army. And his father was in the Prince Albert Light Infantry. And he practically lived in Malta. He went to England with his family for a while, but they got back to Malta.
What was your father's name?
Joe. Joe, born B-O-R-N.
And your mother's side was Maltese?
Yes, Cambry.
And her name was?
My mother was Rose's aunt. Rose's father was my mother's brother.
Oh, that's it, yes. It's like a jigsaw puzzle.
Yes,
it's all coming together.
Yes, yes.
Great. Well, I was going to say, we have a bit of tape left. Would you like to send a message to Rose?
I would love to.
And to Manuel too, and I'll
and
play
to Manuel and to Mary, if possible, too, you know, her sister.
Yes,
so
you can do it in Maltese if you like.
No, I can say it in English, you'll understand yourself better.
You want me to turn it off and have a think?
No, I can carry on. Hello, Rose. Hello, Manuel. It's a good thing to be able to send you this message. Love to you from me and from Rena, too. We often talk about you. And any time you'll make up your mind to visit Malta again, you'll be most welcome. And you'll see some changes from the last time you came here, but not too many. The big change will be myself. I'm growing older and heavier. But like Johnny Walker, I'm still going strong. That is all. Love to you, and remember us. Bye, Rose. Bye, Manuel.